Hey everybody, Shwazy here, and in today's video, we are going to be discussing over 30 fun, cool, and interesting features of the Infiniti QX60. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, today we're talking cool, fun, and interesting features specific to this 2022 QX60. Now, depending on when this video goes up, I may or may not have posted my full comprehensive car review of this vehicle, and if it is already live on YouTube, I'm going to link it up in the corner of the screen so you guys can check out that video after finishing watching this one. But today's video purpose is just to talk about some of the cool, high-level features. Whereas that video went into some of the in-depth specifics of this car, this one just goes over some of the fun stuff, some of the stuff that you don't necessarily find in every single car review, and some things I may have missed in that review that I did. And in no particular order, let's kick off with the first of over 30 cool features specific to this vehicle. Now, I think it goes without saying, but one of the first features I want to discuss is the exterior styling. I mean, this vehicle is gorgeous, and even though looks are subjective, I don't think there's very many people out there that think this vehicle does not look good. I mean, the way they designed that front grille, even though it is massive and some people don't like massive front grilles, I think they designed it very well here. It doesn't look like some of the other competitors out there. I'm not going to name names, but sometimes people don't like those giant grills. Here they made it look really seamless into the front end. You've got these headlights that curve into the grille, gives it a really nice appearance. Obviously they're LEDs, and you've got this cool design here at the bottom of the headlights. Looks really nice. And then even though these are fake grille inserts, they still look really good overall and give it kind of a straight muscular stance over here on the side, widening out the front end. Then you've got a little bit of chrome down here, which doesn't look tacky, but actually fits in very well with the grille surround and also gives it a nice upscale appearance. I mean, driving down this road, this thing looks fantastic, and you can definitely tell this is a luxury vehicle. Coming to the side, I really like this body line that stretches all the way from the A-pillar over here down the side all the way to the front, and then you have another body line that stretches all the way across to the back, and you've got this kind of hockey stick shape that gives it this really nice indent over here on the side of the vehicle. Coming to the back, one of my favorite features is this muscular line that goes all the way from the taillight and kind of integrates into the taillight housing, but gives it kind of a squared off back end, offsetting some of the roundness of the rear end of this vehicle and just the general design. I mean, you can definitely tell where that angle kind of protrudes outside of the body panel, and just, I mean, you could stare at this vehicle for days and not see all of the different body lines and shapes and textures that they used on the exterior. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And the same applies to the interior styling as well. They applied the same cool use of materials and designs and shapes. I mean, the way this Bose sound system kind of has this concave shape to it, they could have just done a flat panel, but they actually had it indented inwards, which just gives it a really cool shape to it. And the rest of the cabin is just gorgeous. You've got these dual 12.3-inch displays and the nice use of sandstone leather throughout the entire cabin. These seats also have a really cool design to them, and they're actually known as zero gravity seats by Infiniti, and you can tell that they look a little bit different than other vehicles that you may have seen on the market. And then coming over to the back, the same nice materials apply. You've got the same concave shape to the speaker grills, and then back here as well, just really nice materials throughout the entire cabin, even into the third row. So design is definitely at the forefront here, and it's got to be a feature I had to discuss on this 2022 QX60. Now, the next cool feature I love about this car, which is actually an option on this vehicle, has to do with the underglow underneath the side inside of the vehicle. So it's almost like the old neon lights from Fast and the Furious, but they look much better in this application. And it's kind of hard to tell because it's still bright outside, so I'm going to try to overlay some footage of this vehicle at night, but it just lights up the side of the vehicle and gives you kind of this really cool bright white light to it that just looks upscale, luxurious, and also gives you a good view of what you're seeing on the ground. So in case you do drop something, you can actually still see where it's at because you have that light on the ground. And it also has a light coming down from the side mirror as well. But you know, in my opinion, lighting is a really cool feature to add into cars that kind of makes it look a little bespoke, a little different than all the other competition. And the Infiniti, with this additional option, definitely adds that luxurious feel to it with this underglow lighting. Now, while we're still out here, I want to briefly talk about the number of Infiniti logos located throughout the exterior and interior of the vehicle. You have one on each side over here on the side skirts of the vehicle. You also have one indented into the front grille over here where it says Infiniti, in case anybody forgot that this logo is obviously Infiniti. You also have some located back here underneath the badging. You have Infiniti laid out in the chrome letters over there, and it gets even better because this one has this illuminated door seal that says Infiniti on it as well. And there's also a lot of Infiniti logos obviously on each wheel. You've got one on the front and one on the back, but you also have it on this headlight housing over here. You've got an Infiniti logo right there, and you've also got an Infiniti logo on the center 12.3-inch instrument cluster display. So let me turn the vehicle on. And as you can see on the screen, you can see the little Infiniti logo located in the corner that's always on in case you, for some reason, forget that you're driving an Infiniti. There's probably a dozen more Infiniti logos located throughout the cabin that I may have missed, but those are just a few I wanted to highlight. Now, for the next fun feature, I must mention how beautifully this center arm console opens. It's got this slow sweeping motion to it, which I haven't seen on any other vehicle, and I've driven some pretty cool cars. Most of them just have a regular center arm console where it just unlocks and you have to lift it up. But no, in this QX60, the arm console actually slowly opens up for you as if it's opening up a present or doing some sort of presentation. That's a really nice touch, and you do have lighting down here. You've got a USB port and just your 12-volt cigarette lighter, but I really just like how it opens up and gives you this really cool, luxurious, premium feel to it. The next cool feature I like has to do with the seat belt. So when you actually buckle your seat belt, the vehicle will actually hug you a little bit in place. Now, I've seen this feature on some other more premium luxury vehicles, but not at a vehicle at this price point. And I think that's pretty cool. I don't really know why it does it. It just kind of gives you a snug hug, letting you know it's there and the seatbelt is on. And so you shouldn't worry if you're driving down the road. Now, another feature I want to point out that has actually been around for a long time, but seemed to disappear in more recent vehicles is when you put this vehicle into reverse, the passenger side view mirror will actually lower so that you have a better angle when you're pulling out of a parking spot. This can be useful if you're perhaps parking in a tight garage and you kind of want to see where your wheel is located, or just give you a better view of your rear view section. I like this feature because you can actually adjust the mirrors in this position, and then when you put it back into drive or into park, the vehicle will go back to your original setting. So you essentially have two different memories for your side view mirrors. Another thing I wanted to point out is with the side view mirrors, they actually sit quite a bit back on the side door panel. Usually you would have that side view mirror maybe start over here, but it's actually pretty far back, and I think they partially did that so you can still have a view in between the A-pillar and the side view mirror. But it does take a little bit getting used to, because then you have to kind of angle the mirrors a little bit differently, because they do sit back almost near the door handle, which I haven't seen on other vehicles before. Now, the next cool feature that I haven't really seen in any other vehicle is something called this clean option. And if you activate this button, it will actually purify the air inside of the vehicle. Now, I'm not quite sure exactly what level of purification this vehicle has. I don't know if it has a HEPA filter or something like that, but that is a cool, quirky feature or add-on that kind of gives this vehicle an edge over some of the competition, because the QX60 will actually purify the air inside of the cabin. While we're in this section, I want to talk about this entire panel. For those of you that are wondering, this is actually a touchscreen. So this is a capacitive button touchscreen, to be specific. And what that means is when you push a button, As you could probably hear, you can tell that you've actually pushed the button. It will give you kind of a haptic feedback or a little vibration letting you know it has been activated and whatever button it is that you've pushed has been turned on or off. The nice thing about that is if for some reason, accidentally you touched one of these buttons like the AC, unless you actually push down on it, the AC will not be activated. And the same goes for all of the other sections. So this is a touch screen, but at the same time, it gives you some of that functionality that you would get from having physical buttons. The other thing I like about that is when you turn the climate control on, you have this center display over here that as you rotate this physical knob, as you can see on the screen, it is a real knob. It will actually show you what temperature or what mode you're in, and the same goes for the passenger side. And you have the ability to control the rear passengers as well and turn their system on and off. Again, just lots of functionality with this touchscreen over here. The only real physical button over here is the hazard lights, which you can turn on and off. I have a feeling that's probably due to safety features. Other than that, everything else is capacitive. Another item to point out down here on this haptic feedback control is you do have heated and ventilated seats. Although I will say that the heated seats don't work as well as I would hope they would. I have a 2021 Ford Bronco, and the heated seats in that essentially boil my butt, versus these ones, they're just a little bit of heat. It's not enough to keep you super warm on a cold day, but I will say the ventilated seats have seemed to work a little bit better, even though it is only about 50 degrees today, so it's hard to tell exactly until it's super hot outside. And to appeal to every single car reviewer that knocks a manufacturer for having a touchscreen volume control, Infiniti actually threw in a physical volume knob on this QX60. So kudos to Infiniti for putting in actual physical knobs for some of the most commonly used features of the climate control. All right, for the next feature, let's jump into the second row. And as we do that, I want to briefly talk about how much taller these second row seats are than the first row. You kind of have this commanding view of the road when you're sitting back here. So even if you're short, then you can still easily see above the driver's head and look out into the road. I really like when manufacturers do this because that means the rear seat passengers can still enjoy the views of the front and not feel like you're just squished back here into a claustrophobic seat. The next really cool feature that we have to point out is how Infiniti designed the access into the third row. By pushing this button, the entire housing will actually move forward and give you much easier access into the third row seats. But it's not just about easier access into the third row. You can actually still keep a car seat in this second row seat and keep it in place without having to remove it and still gain access into the third row because the angle of the seat actually doesn't change. And so if you have a car seat there, yeah, obviously it's probably going to be hitting this front row seat, but you can still keep it in place and have access to the third row so you don't have to sacrifice one thing over another. And the nice thing is the passenger side has that exact same functionality. So it's not like you have to pick a side on which way you can access the third row. Now, sitting back here, it's really not that glamorous. There's not much leg room back here. Infiniti says it's 28 inches, but it's really just about a handful apart between the third row and the second row. But this seat can slide forward, so you can get a little bit more access into the third row. Not too much more to discuss back here. You do have USB ports, and you do have air vents, and you do have a separate climate control system for the second and third row. One thing I want to knock Infiniti on is this vehicle is just north of $60,000, and this is hard touch plastic. I don't really get why they do that. This is not very comfortable to sit in for long road trips. And even though this third row is not meant for full-size adults, it's meant for teens and kids, I still feel like they should have added maybe a soft touch material over there. It wouldn't have cost them that much more, but it would have been a lot more comfortable for if you do have some adults or even kids and teens sitting back here, they would be more comfortable in this type of seating position because there still is plenty of headroom and legroom is okay, especially if you move the seat forward, but that elbow comfort is going to be compromised if you're sitting back here. Another thing to point out is you only have the option for up to 7 seats. So you can only get 2 seats back here in the third row. And that's because Infiniti chose to make this little slot over here, this little storage compartment where you can just put your phone or something like that. But that's really all that can fit back here. And that really has to do with the fact that this third row is pretty narrow. So you can't actually fit a third person back here, or it's not recommended. And so Infiniti chose to just put this little compartment over here rather than putting a seat belt and having space for another seat. Now, speaking of the second row seats, you do have your own climate control, like I mentioned earlier. So this controls those rear air vents as well. But you do have a lot of functionality here. You can have it going towards your head, your feet, or both. And then you can actually turn on an auto feature. And then you actually have heated seats back here for both the passenger and driver side. And you can control the temperature and the fan speed. That's not something you always see, especially with this heated seats in the back, but that is nice to see here on this $60,000 QX60. While we're back here, let's talk about access into the third row. And the nice thing is this vehicle does come with a hands-free liftgate in this sensory trim level, and that's really nice to have. I'm sure you've seen this on other vehicles, but regardless, if you have your hands full, that hands-free liftgate is nice. Now let's talk about the seats and how to put them down. It's actually very easy to do. The first thing you do is pull on this tab. That will lower the headrest, and then you lift up on this handle and the seats will come down. Now, one quirk I wanted to point out is you do have these buttons located back here that actually control the seats going up and down, and my camera can't seem to focus on it, so let me try to cut to it. There you go. As you can see, you can actually lift the seats up. So by holding that button or actually just pushing it, it will raise the seat back into its original position. What I think is funny though is, this button doesn't actually lower it. So you actually have to lower it manually, but then you can push the button to raise it up. I think they assume that since this trunk space isn't very large, you can easily reach and grab the third row seats, put them down, but then to grab this handle is a little bit of a far distance. And so for that reason, they've used this button over here to be able to lift the seats automatically. Regardless, it is nice to see automatic seats, but I do wish they had the option to lower it as well and not just lift it up. Now, while we're back here, let me talk about exactly why this vehicle can only fit 7 people. Because you may be wondering, the Nissan Pathfinder, which this vehicle is based on, can actually fit 8. So you can fit 3 people back here versus the Infiniti QX60, where you can only fit 2. The reason that is because the rear of this vehicle is actually narrower compared to the Pathfinder, and you can kind of see that here in the design. You can see it kind of tapers in a little bit in this third row, and even though I think it's only a little bit subtle because this is kind of the straight line going to the front, and you can see it kind of indents inward over here, even though it is subtle, I think those couple inches that it moves in on the back end sacrifices that middle seat in the back. And Infiniti says they did this because they wanted the design to look a little bit more sleeker as compared to the Pathfinder, which is supposed to be a little bit boxier, a little bit larger. This one sacrifices some of that functionality for the sake of design. I think they did a fantastic job with that. Now let's jump back into the front and talk about this center infotainment screen. Oh, there's another Infiniti logo. So this is a 12.3 inch display, and it's actually standard on regardless what QX60 that you get. This display is not. Standard is a 7-inch. Mine is the upgraded 12.3, but no matter what you get, you'll always get this 12.3 inch infotainment screen, and it really is a fantastic screen to use. I'm not going to go through all of the functionality, but you kind of have your main home menus over here, and then you have your audio controls and some of your quick access stuff here at the bottom, and then obviously you have your settings where you can control all of the other stuff in further detail. But I did want to point out a couple features with this infotainment screen. One of that has to do with the split screen version where you can actually control what this split screen does. So if you go to one of the home menus and you hit customize split screen, you can actually turn on lots of different features like your turn-by-turn directions, even your 5-day forecast over here on the right, and then you can just do a clock if you really don't like seeing anything else on the side. And there again, you have another Infiniti logo. I'm going to be discovering more of those in this video, but then you can also customize your home menu with different widgets and different features. So lots of customization here, and Infiniti has really come a very long way from the infotainment screen that they had just a couple years ago or in the previous generation QX60. One feature I wanted to point out is, as you could see, I was using the touchscreen here and navigating the menus, but you also have this controller knob down here, and if you guys are familiar with Infiniti, you'll know this looks just like every other info knob they've had before, but what's nice is you can actually still control control all of the different menus and the functionality. I may be old school, but I personally love having a knob to be able to access some of these menus. I think it just makes it easier when you're driving down the road. Rather than taking your hands off the steering wheel and controlling this, you can quickly, using muscle memory or using some of these quick access like this menu button or your audio, you can quickly jump to the screen and navigate it using this control knob. And so huge thank you to Infiniti for giving you the option to do both, because in the past they would only be a control knob, then they jumped always to touchscreen, and now you have the option to do either one. This is a really cool feature of the QX60 is you actually have a massage function. So by pushing this button or by navigating to the settings on the infotainment screen, you can actually turn on massage seats on the driver and passenger side. And not only that, but you can cycle through lumbar, relaxing, and refreshing, and you can regulate the speed and intensity at which it massages your back. Now, there's no massage seat function on the seat cushion, but it does apply to the seat back, and it's not amazing. It's not like you're gonna get a shiatsu massage using your QX60, but it is actually really nice, and it's better than you would expect. I know some vehicles have this little massage function, or they kind of want to like stretch you out so that when you're driving on long road trips, you don't get tired. This one, you can actually see the seat cushion does move, and it actually feels really good on your back. So that's not something you can get on every other $60,000 three-row crossover, but you can definitely get that on this QX60. Coming to the steering wheel, one thing I like that Infiniti did is regardless of what interior trim color you get, you always get a black steering wheel. And what I like about that is, over time, if you have a tan or a beige steering wheel, it's gonna start getting darker and dirty and look just nasty over time. Whereas a black steering wheel will, for the most part, always look fine because you're not gonna see any of the smudges. And so I think Infiniti did a good job designing the interior where everything else is either the sandstone or saddle brown or the black color, but the steering wheel is always the same color. And that way you avoid making it look pretty dirty over time. Now let's talk about this center display on the instrument cluster, and it's really vivid and beautiful to look at. Now, there's not too much functionality here, but you can cycle through some of the menus for your music, your navigation, just some of your vehicle controls, and you actually control it using this rotary roller knob over here, which is kind of cool. But there's not too much to discuss over here. It's a pretty basic screen considering how large it is. But what I do like is you have the option to, if you push this button over here, it will pop up with a menu that allows you to change your view, and you can actually change it into a more traditional display versus when you change it into meter view, it kind of gives you this cool graphic where it will show you the RPM as you accelerate and the speed over here on the right. And then obviously you can change what you see over here on the left as well. One thing I wish this vehicle did come with is when you do change the drive modes, it actually doesn't change the look of that background. So it'd be cool if you, changed it into sport, and maybe that's when the gauges would transition into the side view, or maybe it would turn red or something. But regardless of what menu or mode you're in, it looks exactly the same. So, I mean, eco would be cool if it was green, and snow would look cool if it was like white or there was snow coming down. And given that this display is so large, it'd be cool to see that, but unfortunately they haven't added that functionality yet. Another thing I have to talk about while I'm up here is the 360-degree camera, and it really is a nice system. It gives you guidelines so you know exactly where you're turning, and you can cycle through the different menus by pushing this camera button multiple times, and then it'll give you the different angles. What's weird is you can't access every single camera. Like, there is a camera over here, but I can't actually access it. If I push these buttons, it doesn't do anything. And if I push the camera button, it'll just go to my passenger side, but it won't actually go to my driver's side. So I wish Infiniti gave you the option to cycle through and go through all of the different camera angles, but it really only gives you about 3 different angles to cycle through. Now, while we're up here, let me talk about one feature that's kind of quirky about this center display. If you go into the system voice setting, you can actually change the voice preference from male to female, which I haven't seen in any other vehicle. I don't know if anybody really minds if a male or female addresses them, but in case you do, you can actually change the voice by using this button over here.
Please say or select a command.
Please say or select a command.
All right, let's talk about how many cup holders come on the QX60. So you do have a wireless charging port here, but you do have 2 cup holders in the center console. You've got 2 more in the doors on each side. So you got 1 over here and 1 on the driver's side. Then you do have 2 more on each side of the door. So 1 over here and another 1 over there. So that's 6 if you're keeping track. And then you do have 2 more located in the center armrest. That's 8. And then if you get into this third row, you actually have 2 more on each side. So you've got 2 here, 2 over there. So if you're keeping track, that's 12 cup holders for a 7-passenger vehicle. That's got to be like the most cup holder to person ratio that I've ever seen in any car I've reviewed. And you could probably fit a couple more water bottles because there is this storage spot over here that you could probably stick something into. Now let's run the same count for USBs. You've got 2 over here near this wireless charger. You've got another 1 located over here in the center console. So that's 3 for the front row. Another 2 in the second row located underneath the climate control, and they do light up so you're able to access them. And then you do have 1 on either side of the third row by flipping up on this flap. So if you're keeping count, that is 7 USBs for 7 passengers. Also a pretty good ratio. Another thing I wanted to point out back here is in the second row next to the USB ports, you also have this irregular household outlet so you're able to charge your electronics. Now the next feature I want to point out is this manual operated sunshade located for the driver and passenger side on the second row. Just a nice little touch to keep some of that sunlight out when you're driving on long road trips. Another really cool feature about this vehicle is this panoramic sunroof. Now, this is actually standard regardless of what trim level you get, just like that 12.3-inch touchscreen. That's a really nice feature because most of the time you kind of have to upcharge and pay extra to be able to get a beautiful sunroof like this. And it does have a closing sunshade so you can keep some of that sun out. And it also has an automatic opening sunroof. So you don't have to sacrifice having one or the other. You can still have a sunroof, but also have this beautiful panoramic opening so that the second row passengers can still look out and enjoy the skylight. A cool touch about this sunshade is you can actually have 2 different settings. One that actually closes it about halfway, so that way you kind of have just a conventional sunroof, and then if you push that button again, it will close it all the way, and it is fully automatic, as you can see. Now the next feature I want to discuss is what Infiniti calls the Pro Pilot Assist, which is just your suite of safety features. When you push this button, it shows you kind of all the different options, but this vehicle has a laundry list of safety features from forward collision avoidance to pedestrian monitoring to rear collision alert, etc., etc. But one feature I really like is this lane centering button. So if you push this button, which you can actually activate using this center display as well, it will actively monitor the lanes driving down the road and keep this vehicle centered in between the lanes. So it's not just a lane keep assist that will kind of push you back into the middle of the road. It will actually center the vehicle and the steering wheel. Now you do have to keep your hands on the steering wheel at all times. Otherwise it will come up with an alert on the screen and in this section down over here. But regardless, it is nice to have that feature on long road trips. The next feature I love about this vehicle is the ambient lighting throughout the entire cabin. You have this beautiful light strip that goes all the way from the driver's side behind the infotainment screen all the way through to the passenger side and then kind of reconnects underneath the door handle over here. And it also lights up on the grab handle on the door as well. And it's just throughout the entire cabin. You have it over here underneath the wireless charger. You have it actually underneath your feet down where the pedals are. And the same applies to the rear seats as well. You have it on the door panels and the grab handle. It just looks absolutely stunning. And I love seeing ambient lighting in cars, and Infiniti did not disappoint. Although you cannot change the color, I still think that yellowish orange looks beautiful and matches the interior very well. That beautiful ambient lighting actually extends into the cargo area as well, where you have these beautiful aluminum trim pieces that actually have light strips in between them and really gives it a nice, beautiful touch. I mean, it's all for the sake of design, and the design here is spectacular. The next cool feature is if the vehicle is locked and you approach it with the key fob in your pocket, it will actually light up to kind of present you to the vehicle, as you can see over there, and just a really inviting exterior. Even though this is not a feature specific to Infiniti, I've seen this before, it's still a nice touch on this QX60. All right, well, there you have over 30 cool, fun, and interesting features specific to this newly redesigned 2022 QX60. I have been super stoked to get my hands on this vehicle because because I absolutely love how it looks. I think Infiniti did a phenomenal job in designing the interior and exterior of this vehicle and really giving it a premium, bespoke feel to it that's different than all of the other competitors. You can tell they made this luxurious with everything they touched, and Infiniti really took a leap forward with this newly redesigned 2022 model. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Infiniti for giving me the opportunity to review this vehicle for you all. If you guys have any questions about it, leave them in the comments below and let me know what your favorite feature is of this 2022 QX60. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos, and find me on all of the social media down in the description below at Schwazy_. And as always, everybody, I hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day.